Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here with the System Simplified podcast, where we interview top entrepreneurs, founders, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And this podcast is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group. At Business Success Consulting Group, we create custom processes and tailor-made business systems so businesses can thrive and grow. All right, so today we have a podcast, one of those podcasts when I have Dr. Jeremy Wise as the host, because he's going to interview me about how we present our proven process. So hi, Jeremy.
I'm excited because, process documentation implementation is the sexy or non-sexy stuff that helps run the business so the team and everyone can help. So I'm looking forward to this. Great.
All right. So let's just jump into it. So I'm going to walk you through how we present what we do. And, the first thing that we do is we present a team. So for every project, we have a lead consultant. We have consultants that assist the lead consultant as needed, depending on the size of the project. And we have administrative support. All right. The goal is well-documented processes and procedures that are being followed and used by all. That's what we do. We create, document, and implement processes and procedures. So it's always good to keep the eye on the mountain and knowing where we are going and what is the goal. So here are some reasons of why document. I always like to ask the prospective client or my clients, why do you want to document? Because it's really different for each person, right, Jeremy? I mean, if you don't know the why, it's really hard to get this project going because people are not necessarily going to get excited about processes and procedures unless they really have a reason why to do that, which I would assume that this is true for anything, not just documenting processes and procedures. That's why we need to have the goal with the eye on the mountain, and then we have the reasons why document. And I kind of put together some of the reasons, or the most common reasons that I hear from my clients of why they want to document. And by the way, Jeremy, we actually did a whole podcast on why document, the reasons for documentation. So if you want to hear more in-depth explanations, you can listen to the podcast. But the main ones are basically standardization and consistency in operations and results. Increase efficiency. You want to trim the fat. You want to basically increase efficiency in everything that is being done. So if there are processes and procedures that can be accomplished, ability to scale. You don't want to just grow the team. You want to be able to scale so you maintain and increase your profitability. And it's something that can actually run without having to add people all the time. Because part of the ability to scale also involves automation and making things more efficient. It's a way to train new people, smooth onboarding. It is a very easy way to monitor compliance and to actually achieve accountability. Knowledge transfer. Now, knowledge transfer is basically transferring the knowledge from a key employee, any employee, the owner, the founder, and basically take all the knowledge from their head and put it onto electronic paper, right? It's just like something that everybody can basically take, duplicate, and do. Then if you want to work on the business, not in the business, and basically have more time to whatever that time is. And when we dive into why document, that would be one of the questions is, what do you want to do with that time? Why do you want to have more time? Because if you just want to have more time for the sake of time, what are you going to do with it? That will motivate you to get this project done. And then maybe you want to start a new activity, maybe a new branch of the business. Maybe you want to franchise, whatever it is. Maybe you are growing into a different market. That's also important to document. So it's really important to understand why we are documenting. The next thing is, let's assess the current scene. What is happening right now? Where are things at? So those are some examples right here that I gave of different things that I got from clients of where they were before we started. So maybe there isn't established way to monitor what is going on, no accountability. Maybe you don't have a way to actually onboard new clients. Maybe you tried to do it yourself, but you weren't able to do it because of lack of time, lack of know-how. You maybe documented too much, too little. It's not something that is being utilized. You are lacking right now uniform results of the team performance. You have problems with retaining new employees. You need to hire new staff and you need to know how to hire them. So whatever the current situation is, it's very important to understand it. So then we know it's also a way for us to evaluate how successful the project is, because we're going to go from what is right now, current state, to the future state, which is when we're going to be done with the documentation.
I do want to point out, Adi, you mentioned franchise and you mentioned, some of the largest companies, corporations in the world do this. And you mentioned, that's how McDonald's can have kids coming out of high school running multi-million dollar stores, right? Restaurants. Absolutely. Because of this, right?
Absolutely. And it's not just the McDonald's of the world. I mean, every business has to have it. And as entrepreneurs, as a small, medium-sized business, we tend to think that we can just run with it and do it without having processes and procedures. But if you want to scale, it's basically having, then you can have like a McDonald's type model, but you can have it in your own business and then you can actually grow and scale. So let's talk about the outcome. So again, the outcome is whatever you want the outcome to be. But here are some common denominators that after doing this for over 25 years, I find that that's what business owners want, right? They want increased control over the business. So owners are able to diagnose issues, and it's not just owners, can be like the executive team, the leadership team, any managers. So they're able to diagnose issues in the business objectively and take action. And we have a whole podcast that we did, Jeremy, on how we actually use processes and procedures in order to increase efficiency in the business, and how you actually use it in order to diagnose issues and problems and what to do with it. The next one is the outcome is time. So you get back, in this case, for instance, I took an example of an owner that told me he got back 10 to 15 hours a week to work on other projects or work on the business or start a new business. And this is one example, but I have multiple examples, many examples of hours and hours and hours that I gained back in the week to actually be able to work on other projects. And that's why also it's important to define what do you want? What are you going for? Like, what do you need those hours for? So you can actually utilize that time to do it. Because, Jeremy, I'm sure you will agree with me that time is like a vacuum, right? You get more time, boom, it's being filled with things. So you want to make sure that you're actually filling it with the right things. And another thing on the outcome, of course, revenue and profitability. So you want to have, let's say you are doing, in this case, a sales process, you will increase closing rates. You want to make sure your profit margins are higher because you are more efficient. So that's definitely part of the outcome. And as we talk and as I interview you, we define what outcome are we going for? How are we going to measure success? Let's say you're a property management company. All right. So right now you are managing, let's say 500 doors. You want to now be able to manage 1,000. So you're 2xing. Another client wanted 3x of the revenue. That's what we went for. So it really depends on what are your goals, but we define the outcome. Another one is increased staff retention. I was just talking to a client today. One of the reasons why he hired us because there was so much staff turnover. So the outcome is staff retention. We created a beautiful documentation, processes and procedures documented for that company. And now we're working on the onboarding. So the staff that is coming on board is going to be trained correctly, and then also utilize these processes and procedures in order to evaluate how they're doing, in order to create stability, in order to train them on the job as they are working. And then one of the outcome can be hiring based on the right fit and not necessarily on experience. That was very important to one of our clients, a property management company, where they really, they were hiring based on experience because they didn't have a way to train them. So they had to hire people that already trained. So when we created the processes and procedures, one of the outcomes was that they were able to hire people that really fit their unique culture, and then they were able to train them. So that's an example of an outcome. And also the staff and the owners and the executive team are able to have a balanced life, whatever that is. If it means that you can go home and eat dinner with the family 3 times a week, great. Maybe you want to take a vacation, an uninterrupted vacation. Maybe it is that you want to be able to work out more. Whatever it is, that is part of the outcome. For instance, I was working with a very busy business owner, and what she wanted is to be able to pick up her kids from school 1 day a week. So we go, okay, good. We're going to document. We're going to implement it in the company, making sure it's being followed by all. And we're going to train the employees on it. Everyone will know what their hat is in the company, what hat they're wearing, and how they are actually executing their actions. And then she was able to step back and accomplish that goal of picking up her kids from school and taking them to the park to play 1 day a week. And from there, it created more and more time, but that was part of the outcome. Then after we established that,
I want to point out one thing, Adi, with the process. From what you have said too, one thing that I have found that comes out of this is once you go through this, people go through this with you, their systems and processes become even more efficient, because sometimes they haven't visited these things in years, maybe longer than years. And so by going through it, people think, well, why do we, there's actually, why are we doing it this way? Actually, we don't do that anymore. So, it makes everything more efficient in the business itself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in terms of the training, the onboarding, I agree. All right. So here are some of the concerns that we like to address before we go over the proven process, which is basically, those are questions that people ask. How do we actually do the knowledge transfer? What is the time commitment? How do we get someone trained? How do we ensure it gets implemented? How do we track that the procedures are being followed? How will we work with the team? All of those answers. I mean, we go, like, if I was, if one of our listeners right now want to know the answers to that, if I was actually talking to you, presenting you live, I would definitely answer each and every one of those concerns. But I created a podcast. Jeremy, we recorded that one together as well, where we answer each one of those concerns and talk about it more in depth. So I'm going to continue with explaining our proven process, but I just wanted to show this one so you know that those are common concerns and questions, and we have answers for them. All right. So what we are creating is basically we are creating a manual, right? We're creating a playbook, a business playbook, a manual. Those processes and procedures are the how-to. And we want to make sure that we are creating the perfect manual for you. So here is what a perfect manual should consist of, so it's easy to follow and use. So a perfect manual has to contain it contains the why, the purpose, the big picture. What are, let's say, for instance, we'll take the sales department. Okay. So what is the purpose of your sales department? What is the big picture? What are we trying to accomplish when we sell our, whatever, the services, the products, when we sell it to our clients or our customers? Or let's take, for instance, customer service. If you have a customer service department and we are writing the manual for the customer service, what is the purpose of customer service? How do you want to treat your customers? What is the experience like, right? So we start with the overall big picture. It also has to match the culture. We are going to write the manual according to what your culture is. So if you have a very corporate type culture, it's not going to be the same manual as if you are, more of laid back, creative type of a company. So the manual has to match the culture. So that's why it's very important for us to understand your mission, your vision, your core values, the voice, how you communicate, how you interact, because it has to match it. Otherwise, it will be foreign to your culture and people are not going to use it. We have to have the end user in mind. For example, right now, we are doing a project. That's one of the questions that came up. Who is the end user of each one of the processes? Is it going to be your managers? Is it going to be the end user is going to be a staff member that is actually going to use it on a day-to-day basis? Is it going to be for your HR director to use with the new employees? We have to make sure who is the end user. It has to have well-defined workflow and processes. It has to contain the how. So this is where the procedures and the checklists come into play. Best practices and advices, that's very important because we want to retain the knowledge. Remember the knowledge transfer, that's part of it. A glossary of terms. I'm just working with a client that has a software development company, and he brought somebody that didn't know about software development. And that was really rough for them to understand. So that's why a glossary of terms is very important in order to onboard and train your staff and make sure that everyone is on the same page. And we utilize all methods of learning, right? Because people learn different ways. So it has to be audio, visual, read and write, hands-on, kinesthetic. So the perfect manual should include all type of learnings. So we can actually have it will basically communicate to any type of user. All right, so here's our process. The first process is design. The second one is creation, and the next one is implementation. And it's very important to have all of them balanced out so we create the perfect manual. So I'm going to jump into explaining each one of those phases. So let's take a look at phase one, which is the design phase. Now, before I'm going to go into details, I really want to emphasize that, like anything else, when you design something, when you invest the time, the attention and the thought into designing something very well, then the construction of it will be much easier, but it will also allow us to get the outcome that we want. Because and the analogy, of course, is like an analogy of building a house. If you don't have the blueprint, if you don't think about things, if you don't select all the appliances and all the things that you want to have in the house, if you don't design what you want, you will have chaos. You will have a complete, it won't be a good product in the end, right? And you're not going to be happy. That's why we are spending so much time on designing and making sure that we actually know where we are going. So what does that mean? Here's the design phase. So the first thing that we do is we do an inventory of content. We survey key employees. We map the workflows of the company. We identify the process for each of the areas. We identify the key procedures and checklists of each one of those processes. We identify the process documentation software and create the templates to use. So I talk many times in many of my podcasts about using a process documentation software because it makes it easier, it makes it faster, it makes it so everyone can actually access the processes and procedures. But we need to identify the software that is good for you and figure out how we are going to actually build the templates in the software so it matches what you need and the outcome that you're looking for. And then we are going to determine the document style, the documentation style, and your voice. Again, this is important because it has to match your culture and it has to be communicated in such a way that everyone on your team will actually use the documentation. And then we assign due dates and responsibilities for execution. This is part of the design phase. We design the entire project. We make sure that the project will get done, right? That's what we want to make sure. We want to make sure that there is full execution. So we decide ahead of time, okay, we want to get it done. It's important for you to get it done to meet your goals for the quarter. So by the end of this quarter, this is what we're going to get done. Good. So what are the actual milestones in order to actually get it done? And then instructions on how to implement and keep the manual current, which is very important. So that's part of, we're going to roll it out during the implementation phase, but we want to make sure that you understand right now what it will take to implement it. So we are taking into account here in the planning phase. The deliverable of this particular phase will be a written plan with step-by-step instructions on how to build the manual for the company. It is possible that some companies just want the design phase because they want to do the implementations themselves, which is totally fine. If a project is going that way, we're going to give you specific step-by-step instructions that you can then take and implement. Although the majority of our clients definitely move on to the creation phase as well, because as we discussed in other times, the timing of it, the know-how, if you want to get it done, we get it done for you. So, Jeremy, any questions on this?
No, I think this is an important phase because, you kind of go through what you feel the company needs based on assessing where they're at. So, and especially with the documentation part, this is kind of the foundation, right? If you get this part wrong, you're kind of off in a direction where you're not really supporting the goals of the company.
That is correct. All right. So the next step is the creation step. This is where we create your manual. So content creation. How do we do that? This is an example. It doesn't have to be weekly meetings, but it's very important that we have regular meetings, right? So we have, in this example, so we have weekly meetings with stakeholders to review progress and assign tasks for the week. Because remember, we had that already defined in our design phase. And with the assignments will consist of instructions to record or to write certain procedures. And again, this is where it's more tailor-made, depends on the needs of the team. Sometimes we have a team that is very strong at writing. They prefer writing. Sometimes they want just to record videos and they want us to write the processes and procedures. So whatever it is, we adjust it and we'll give you specific instructions. And then we will create a content in the software documentation platform based on the assignments. And we create it. Sometimes the team creates some, we review. Then we submit it for the team to review because we want the feedback. This is a question that comes up a lot in terms of how do we make sure that every voice is heard? Well, this is how we do it. We select specific people that we will work with on documenting specific procedures. And then we have the entire team review it and give feedback. Because let's say, for instance, you have 5 estimators and you want to write the processes and procedures for the estimating department. Well, let's say we have 15 procedures. So each estimator will write 3 of those procedures. So we'll interview them and we'll extract the knowledge and we'll write 3 of those procedures based on each estimator. And then we're going to present it to the entire group. So everybody reads it, gives their comments or their advice or any changes. And that also creates this great conversation about the effectiveness of the existing process and how we can change it. So it's a whole process by itself of process improvement right there, but that's how we go about it. And then we will contact the staff as needed to clarify points in between the meetings, provide advice on streaming the processes, and we'll also provide advice on the most efficient way to use the different software that you're using, including the best utilization of a project management software, if you're using it or if you would like to use it. This is an example. It will be specific to whatever your needs are in terms of the software that you're using or the tools that you're using. We also will advise on automation because as we go through the process, we'll see that maybe this needs to be automated or that needs to be automated. So that is also something that we will do throughout the process. And then the deliverable is really well written and streamlined processes and procedures in the form of an online manual. Now, the next part is the implementation, which is very important. And I actually recorded, as I said before, a podcast just on implementation. I have 2 very thorough blog articles that I give my clients when we're done to read and to listen to the podcast, because it gives you step-by-step instructions on how to implement the manual. So I'm not going to go over all of it here, but this is how we implement. And I just want to emphasize that this is a key part of the process, because we can write the most beautiful manual, and we do a fantastic job in terms of writing manuals that people want to read, that are well written, they are aligned to the culture, but if that it's not being used, there is no point in actually doing this project. So that's why we do spend time and we have a lot of attention on the implementation part. What we do here is we link the processes and procedures to a scorecard. That is very important in order to be able to monitor how well the processes and procedures are working. If you do not have a scorecard, if you're not keeping metrics, then we'll help you figure out what those metrics should be to actually measure the effectiveness of the process. And then we create a weekly report and help implement it. So that means that we will have a weekly that is for a specific company. If you want it, we can help you implement the weekly reports so we can see the accountability and how well the staff is doing with that. And then create drills and quizzes to consult the understanding. That is one thing that we do for almost every project in order to be able to onboard better and in order to be able to train new employees. We roll out the manual to the team, have them review the content and go through the exams, meaning your existing team should know what the manual says. So let's say, again, we're writing a manual for your sales team. We have to make sure that your existing team know what's there, so you don't just train it on your on any new employees as you're bringing them on, but you actually have to make sure that everybody knows what's in the manual. So the existing team will actually follow the process and will also be able to help any new employees as they come on, because they all will have the same concept and agreement on what it needs to be done. And then we coach the leadership team on how to ensure the processes are followed by all and provide hands-on support on implementing it. And we also create a regular review checklist so the processes and procedures are kept current, even when we are not involved in the project anymore. And the deliverable here is processes and procedures that are followed by all. And again, this is a vast topic. We definitely work on the implementation and we make sure that the processes and procedures are followed by all. And I think, Jeremy, I maybe said it 10 times, but I think you got by this time that this is really important that they're being followed by all.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the most important things because, and that's kind of comes with the previous step, which is the creation process, because everyone's involved in the creation process, like you said. So it's not like it just shows up and like, here it is. The staff is involved in creating it. So, the process that you kind of set forth, it's almost ingrained in that process because they've already started helping and creating them. So it's not this big surprise at the end. They're already starting to create it. So they are, kind of have a hand in the whole creation process. When you get to this part, they are going to be following it. For sure.
Absolutely. All right. So interaction and implementation. So, we do more. This is an example for a specific client. So with them, we're doing it remote via Zoom. We can also do it in person, depends on where you're located. We have clients all over the US, actually all over the world. We have clients in Australia and the UK. So we're very good at doing it remotely. We have scheduled meetings. So we have it's going to get done. But as I say, we always get it done. We hold the team accountable. So we have to have scheduled meetings, and we have a structure, and we have flexibility in communication between meetings. If you like to communicate via Slack, we can be on your Slack channel. We can be on Teams. We can communicate via email, text, whatever it is. We have a lot of flexibility, and we're looking at it as a partnership. We partner with you. We know you have a full-time job. We know all of your employees have a full-time job and more. So we do not expect you to stop what you're doing, but we integrate into the day-to-day operations so we can actually get it done. And we always get it done. Now, another thing, now we also decide on the timeline. This is just a sample timeline for a specific project, right? But we will let you know specifically to you after we assess the situation, if it's going, how long will we spend on the design phase, how long we will spend on the creation, and how long we will spend on implementation. So you will have an idea of the timeline. And of course, based on our assessment, on talking to you, we will be able to provide the cost, the timeline, and the cost for this project. All right. And then, of course, time for questions after we present. And there are always questions. We always answer it. So that is our proven process.
So where people can learn more, they can go to bizsuccesscg.com, and they can go to the contact button and email you and the team.
Absolutely. Yes.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.